Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Chris.
Avengers Assemble.
We've got Vince.
Oh, look at you with your fancy pants shield.
And I'm Kia. Hi. Oh boy, in case Chris didn't give it away too much there, we are talking about the Avengers today. Woohoo! And we are reading a miniseries from the mid to late 80s. What was this, 1987? Not really a miniseries, sorry, a story arc called Avengers Under Siege. Written by Roger Stern with art by John Buscema, or Buscema, however you say that. Roger Stern, is he the guy who wrote those Hobgoblin comics we did way back when with Spider-Man?
Yes, he was.
Those
Very
are really good.
And have we read anything else with him?
No, but we need to read like everything by him.
He's great.
He's really good. This, this series, the story is basically about all the D-list villains teaming up together to take over the mansion and fuck over the Avengers, and it's pretty great. I'm happy because I always love the D-list supervillains, and seeing more of them is always great because they're very corny people. And a nice little roster of Avengers in these books. I guess we should talk about the roster, huh? We've got in charge is the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who, if you saw the Ant-Man movie, she's the dead wife of Michael Douglas, right? Yeah. So
Quite an impact, right?
Yeah. Well,
no,
she's not dead. She's missing. So maybe she's gonna be in the next movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fake out. I feel like she'll be in the next movie.
But she'll probably be like super young.
Oh,
because Hank Pym in the comics, he had a wife who died, and then he's like, "Oh, the Wasp reminds me of my dead wife."
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to believe that relationship didn't work out.
Yeah. But anyway, so she's in charge. You've also got Captain America. He's there, but not in charge. He's just like hanging out. You've got the Black Knight. What's this guy's name?
His name is Dane. He's a white dude.
Dane.
Don't be misled by Marvel Comics or any superhero comics with a guy named Black in the title. He's white.
Yeah,
he's also named Dane.
Yeah. He has like a magic enchanted sword that was blessed by Merlin or magicked by Merlin or whatever. That's his general idea. You've got Namor, who's just joined, but the public opinion's kind of divided on him since he's tried to take over the world a few times. Yeah. You've got... so I know her as Photon, mainly, but right now she's running around as Captain Marvel. It's Monica Rambeau. That's her real name, but she's had a bunch of different names. I think she was Spectrum at one point also. She's basically like light power. She can turn into light or like electric waves, that kind of thing.
Could she do that even in Next Wave?
I don't know. I have not read Next Wave. I think
she mostly blasts things in Next Wave.
That's what I thought, because I saw her name and I was like, I know I read her comics like in the mid 2000s, but I couldn't remember if she was like in the Ultimate Universe or where. And then I looked her up and she was in Next Wave, and I could not remember her at all.
Well, right now she's on a team in comics called The Ultimates, which is not in the Ultimate Universe because the Ultimate Universe doesn't exist anymore. But they are called The Ultimates because they're going to solve the ultimate problems, and so it's all like science, cool stuff. It's a really good book.
Oh, it's actually well done. Okay.
Oh my god, yeah, they went to Galactus, the World Eater, and they were like, man, why does this guy keep eating planets? Let's maybe just get to the root of this problem, and they put him to Galactus, the Lifebringer. So Galactus is like a good guy running around saving stuff instead of eating planets.
They did the 5 Whys with Galactus.
The 5 Whys?
You ask why? Well, because of this. Why? Because of this. And when you get to 5, then you find the true root cause.
Oh, that makes sense.
They did a very lean, continuous improvement approach on Galactus.
So anyways, that's what Photon is doing now. Sorry, I keep calling her Photon. Captain Marvel. She's Captain Marvel in this book, and so they'll keep calling her Captain Marvel. You've also got Hercules.
Hercules.
It always confused me the first time I realized that Marvel characters came from both the Norse gods as well as the Greek gods. But it doesn't bother me anymore. I'm used to it. So you got Hercules here. He's hanging out. He's kind of an asshole. He is just like a drunken prick, always getting into some fight at a bar, always getting drunk, always doing that kind of thing.
He's filling your Wolverine role right now.
Kind of, yeah. I will say there's another great Hercules series that just happened fairly recently where he's kind of realizing that he's become a joke, and none of the Avengers like respect him. They're like, oh, that guy's always just getting drunk, so he's trying to change for the better. Pretty good. So, all right, we're not talking about modern comics. We're talking about this thing. So that's our team. Hercules, by the way, does not seem to like that the Wasp is in charge. Seems he's got problems with a lady being in charge, or I don't know. But, we didn't even mention which issues we're reading. It's 270 through 277. But really, the first two, they're kind of like slowly setting everything up. The third one, 272, is not part of the storyline at all. We'll get to that. And then the rest of it is kind of where we jump into the action from 273 to 277. So, yeah, we ready to jump right into it? Anything else we need to mention before we start talking about it?
No, I'm digging it, though.
I'm digging it. All right, so issue 270. Basically, like I said, in these first two issues, they're kind of setting the scene. In issue number 270, Moonstone has escaped. She's another one of these D-list villains, and she has the power to phase through walls. And she is pretending to be a lady in this crowd of like angry people yelling about Namor.
But I like how all this is layered though, because the book starts with like news stories about Namor possibly joining the Avengers, and it's Namor the Submariner. You may also know him as that, but it's done better because like I don't like exposition through news often. And this was an era, the 80s, where this happened a lot. But they do a really good job of it, like doing like man-on-the-street interviews and with people who seem like well-reasoned on both sides of like, yeah, I like Namor. You know, he fought with that. Like they have veterans from World War II. They're like, Namor was pretty awesome. And they have people like recently that were like, oh, I'm not a big fan of Namor. Like he did like destroy all of wherever recently. And they have this widow. She was like crying, and she's like, my husband went to work and he got killed. And then it's like, oh, that widow was actually Moonstone, a villain. Like revealed like 3 or 4 pages later, and I'm like, that's actually pretty fucking good. Like
it is.
Like because first of all, I'm like, why is this woman like 3 years later dressed in all black? You know, at this like rally, you know, like with the black veil, like my husband, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, but it is visually distinct. So then when it's revealed, like, oh, she was Moonstone, she was manipulating the public, let's go get her. I'm like, fucking awesome. Yeah. This is like,
although I have a problem with that because, as we know, that's not how people would react. They would say, yeah, sure, but okay, that doesn't mean Namor is not still a murderer. Like everyone in the audience was in the crowd was way too easy to be like, oh boy, we were wrong. We need to, you know.
Yeah, everybody's very well reasoned in these crowds though, but I also like to think of it as like it's not that different. Like it does a really good job of like if we read this comic today, there'd be like Huffington Post think pieces about Namor, you know, like or like BuzzFeed pieces that like anybody could write and somehow share on their Facebooks. Like Namor's not a bad guy. The things Namor won't tell you. Snopes.com, you know, like shit like that, like MediaMatters.org or whatever the fuck. And it works really well. It's by Roger Stern, and Roger Stern, goddamn, like I really want to read more of his comics because these are like 80s comics that are like throwback comics and not like what Alan Moore and like Frank Miller were doing, but like fucking ahead of their time or something. Like they're just well put together. And I really like it. It is
very like it has a fun classic style to it, where it is like plot, but all the plot like flows together very well compared to older 60s 70s comics where it's plot, but it was very much like just okay, information overload. Where here it all makes sense, it all flows together very smoothly, and you're right, it is very well plotted.
Yeah, and it's to me at least it feels like kind of the next step from like 60s and 70s kind of Marvel comics, where it's just kind of like it's still kind of goofy. But at the same time, you're like, well, it sort of makes sense in its own way. You know?
Yeah, like there's a little thing like, why have the Avengers not said anything about this Namor controversy? And it's like, why hasn't the Avengers Twitter updated? It's like, they got time traveled out of somewhere by Kang the Conqueror, so they just weren't able to respond. Sorry. And I'm like, I'm just like, this is funny. Like, I'm like, this is in its world, a logical reason why they have not commented on this news story. They're not like avoiding the press. It's just
it also does a good thing throughout these 7 issues where it mentions some of the other heroes and why they're not around, and it actually like I wish they did this more where they make references to exactly what they're doing in their issues, like the Fantastic Four is out of the country right now, the West Coast Avengers, we've sent them this to distract them, like that kind of thing. Like it, I always appreciate it when they try to explain why the others aren't there to help.
Yeah, they do. They do a really good job, especially because this story is called Under Siege, which, spoiler alert, the Avengers get under siege. And it's like, well, why can no one else come help them? Because they're all fucking gone. And you can go read about it in these other Marvel comics. Don't you want to do that, kids? It's like, yeah,
Smart.
I do.
I know I do. So the Avengers show up and they capture Moonstone, send her off with the cops.
But they do something weird that like they all seem primarily concerned with like stopping people from getting hurt. Like, like there's explosions and like every hero of the Avengers team is not just trying to stop Moonstone, trying to stop the bad guys. Their primary concern is like get them out of the city. Get them out of the city, keep this thing from falling on them. And I'm like, this is a good Avengers team. It's a really well put together Avengers team, even though it's a lot of people like Black Knight that I just don't care about.
Yeah, Black Knight has never been one of my favorite characters at all. And Namor as well. Namor just bores me. But he leaves pretty soon.
I like Namor, but I also like the characterization we get in this. That Stern does a good job of not like beating you over the head with it when Moonstone's like, "I'll kill you, Black Knight, just like I did the Wasp," and he like freaks out about it. It's a good way of being like, "Oh, he likes her." Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, they drop little hints here and there that Black Knight has a crush on Wasp, and they get more overt with it as it goes. I'm like, all right, nothing really comes of it. Maybe later it will. I don't know. But anyways, they capture Moonstone, who goes with the cops, but it's not really the cops. It's more D-list villains hiding, pretending to be cops, and they set her free because it's Absorbing Man.
I was gonna say Absorbing Man's not D-list. That guy rules.
You're right. I kind of like if they're a small time villain, I just always automatically think of them as D-list. But really, mostly there's like B, C, D-list. Like the Wrecking Crew shows up later. I'd say they're pretty B-list, right?
Right.
Maybe.
But like the Fixer, I
love
feel
the
is D-list.
Yeah. You're right about that.
I would just say don't ever have police officers in highly reflective helmets where you can't see who they are. That seems to just get the Marvel universe in trouble, like
You're
consistently.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, it's Absorbing Man and Titania. I love them, by the way. Absorbing Man, Crusher Creel, is one of my favorite characters. He just absorbs shit and turns into it. And Titania is his wife, a super strong lady. Although I don't think they're married in this. I think they're just like partners, right?
I don't know. I didn't even know who they were, and they didn't really.
I think nowadays they're married or maybe split up. Who knows? But they're great. So anyways, they're free. Namor also has been served with papers. He's being sued for $2 billion, which is a lot of money, but he did try and take over the world. So I think it's kind of fair. And, they're talking to a lawyer, being really proactive about it, and then he finds out that his old girlfriend was kidnapped, and he's like, peace, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah,
it's in a really weird like crossover with like an Alpha Flight book at that point. Like the book just like shifts gears for that final page.
Yeah, his girlfriend is like a member of Alpha Flight, and she's gotten kidnapped, so they're working together to go rescue her, or something to that effect.
Yeah, that last page. I mean, it definitely feels like it's a different artist, or it's like we need one more page of content here to direct readers to Alpha Flight.
And we jump to the next issue where. Jan is all mad that people aren't treating her with respect as leader of the team. Hercules is also around blowing off some steam. And Jan runs into Paladin. Who is Paladin? I do not know who this guy is.
He's a purple dude. He was in one of the Thunderbolts teams that I read. Was he in the one right after the Warren Ellis team? Right before the Warren Ellis team?
I think he was probably right after.
Yeah, right after.
I remember him, but then I got confused because Paladin sounds like a name that would be Black Knight's name. So every time I saw Black Knight, I was like, that's Paladin. And then I'm like, no, that's not Paladin.
Well, it doesn't help that he just doesn't look like a Paladin. He just looks like he's wearing like purple tires all around his body. Like it doesn't. It's not a good look.
He looks like the Brigadoon guy from the Doctor Strange book we read last week.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Brigand.
Yeah.
Brigand.
Not Brigadoon. I'm like Brigadoon. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, he's just a pure like mercenary. He's usually like vaguely more heroic than like Deadpool, but like he appeared in Deadpool comics and kind of, he's like I said, more neutral positive than like Taskmaster and those guys. Yeah. But he's the same sort of like he'll fight Spider-Man or whoever if somebody pays him to.
So he should have definitely been in that Doctor Strange book.
Yeah, that would have made more sense.
So he totally wants to bang the Wasp.
Yeah, they've got some kind of a history together or something like that where there's a lot of tension.
They went on a cruise together earlier in Stern's run where they didn't know each other at the time, but Wasp went on a cruise and then she's like, "Oh, this guy's cool," and then found out he was Paladin.
The Avengers just have time to go on a cruise? That's fucking awesome.
It was a vacation, man.
I mean, yeah, even superheroes need vacations.
Did they find crime at sea?
You know it.
Oh, and if the boat was cruising too fast, then it was going to blow up. Oh no!
Somebody had to take control of that cruise.
So Captain Marvel also goes and hooks up with a police buddy. First, hooks up. When I say hook up, I mean asks him some questions, and he is telling her about how these other supervillains have also been escaping, like Grey Gargoyle, Whirlwind, and Mr. Hyde. Oh, of all the greats coming out, all the greats. And Wasp and Paladin.
Friend of the show, Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
Mr. Hyde. He was so terrible in the Ghost Rider miniseries that we read, but boy, he's amazing in this. We'll get to that. But then Wasp and Paladin, I'm a little confused on what happened here. They go to interrogate Yellow Jacket, who has been arrested as well. Another villain who has stolen the Yellow Jacket gear, which used to belong to Hank Pym.
So let's get the timeline right on the Yellow Jacket.
There's a lot happening
here. Hank
Pym
was Yellow Jacket, but then hurt his brain. Oh no, he was Ant-Man. Then his brain got hurt, and he thought he was somebody else. So then he renamed himself Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket was also the villain in the Ant-Man movie. But at this point, the Yellow Jacket costume is now in the possession of a bad woman.
Right.
Okay.
And
she's not that bad.
She's not that bad, but she's there. And for whatever reason, Wasp and Paladin are interrogating her. Like, where'd you get the costume? And Grey Gargoyle and Screaming Mimi, another classic. Screaming Mimi, they show up to break her out.
Screaming Mimi, of course, would go on to be a pretty well-known Thunderbolt, and I guess she's sort of joined an Avengers team, or maybe that was just Avengers.
Yeah, she's in the Avengers now. She's in New Avengers. So yeah, she's maintained her kind of status as a good guy, but right now she's still a bad guy.
Screaming Mimi is how is that a good person's name? That doesn't even...
No, well, she changed her name to Songbird when she joined the
okay. I do know Songbird.
Sorry.
There's a lot of Thunderbolts in this book. Like, a lot of Thunderbolts.
All of the Thunderbolts, except for Mach 1 and Jolt, who was like a new creation for later. But I think all the others are in this book, which made me very happy. I'm a big Thunderbolts fan. All these supervillains, they all kind of suck individually, but working together, they're actually doing a pretty good job. But
I also like there's a part where suddenly girl Yellow Jacket is just in her costume, and she's like, "That was weird. How did I get my costume?"
I don't know.
Which also happened to Moonstone in the previous issue. Just like between pages, she suddenly gets in costume, and you're like,
well, Moonstone, I believe, has that power to kind of phase her costume in around her.
I felt like it was just the artist was like, they need to be in costume now, so just put them in costume, and we'll make a weird line to cover it up. Because why else would they be on the run from a hero and then change into costume?
Right, it doesn't make any sense because then you're just more apparent. So they beat up the Avengers managed to beat up Grey Gargoyle and Screaming Mimi, but Yellow Jacket gets away, which seems like a really bad loss for the villains. Like, they set out to free one, and 2 of them got captured. Like, that's not good numbers, y'all. Y'all should have figured that out ahead of time. Anyways, the next issue, 270...
Well, let's not forget, Hercules wins a series of bar bets.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Oh, my God.
Wait, is that at the beginning of the...
No,
Next
that's
issue.
throughout this issue. He's
Okay, and yeah.
first he helps a guy, and the guy's like, "Hey, you saved me a bunch of money and a headache. Can I buy you a drink?" And he's like, "Finally, a little respect." And then it just keeps cutting back to him as he's getting in like increasingly elaborate bets.
Yeah, he's really just doing. He's hanging out at bars for a few issues here, and yeah, 272, the issue that we're not going to read. Namor comes back and he's like, "Hey, I know I said I could handle this thing on my own, but I kind of need the Avengers' help." So, issue 272 is all underwater, just trying to take care of Namor's thing, and then he doesn't even come back to join the team again afterwards. So, Namor's out of the picture for a while. We don't
Okay,
have to
that's
worry.
good. And I'm glad I didn't read it because I hate underwater levels in video games. So
And here's again, this is my problem with Namor, or at least all the stuff that I've read, is that his stories just always end up being like, I'm an undersea dude and I want to take control of the water, and Namor can't have it. Fight, 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 and they just fight back and forth until one faction wins. And like, I'm gonna kidnap your girlfriend, and that's kind of it. And that's kind of the impression I got from this issue as well, where it was just undersea fighting, go, 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 and kind of nothing else came out of it. But
Yeah.
there was interesting stuff happening every time I would glance down at the words, but I didn't read it very quickly. So
Yeah, I like the idea of him being more of an X-Men character because his villains all suck.
yeah, yeah. I think whenever he is kind of struggling with that sort of like, where do I belong? Who am I? That kind of thing. That's always more interesting.
Oh,
Um,
272, if you're reading on Marvel Unlimited, they also, I don't know if it's corrected in the graphic novel Under Siege, but they have a sort of bonus page where they're like, whoops, we screwed up coloring this.
yeah, there was definitely
yeah,
that in 271, right?
that's the one that I was thinking. Yeah, with the gray gargoyle, where they accidentally colored him all gray when he should have turned back to flesh or something to that effect.
Right.
Yeah, Grey Gargoyle has a weird power. He can turn people into stone for an hour, and also turn himself to stone whenever he wants. It's kind of situational. He also at one point leaves,
And then 2 years later,
Paladin
Mario.
there.
2 years later, Mario 3, you could turn into a statue, which had no use. Also,
What?
Yeah, had no use. Well, you could hide, but that's it.
The
Yeah,
Tanuki
enemies
suit.
would walk past you.
Oh, is that what would happen?
no,
I was impatient.
At one point, he hides, like he throws a big old column on top of Paladin and then runs away. And he doesn't like bother to touch Paladin and turn him into stone. Like that would have been a good idea before you left, buddy. I don't know. Dumb supervillains. They don't know what they're doing. They need somebody to organize them. Maybe
That's
we'll
why
get
you're
somebody.
with Kathy Griffin on the D list.
So issue 273, Hercules is continuing to do his bar fights. And it turns out this guy who's been like betting him is a member of the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecker, right? Is that his name? It does. I always get all their names mixed up. And they're like, "Hey, I bet you can't lift up this table with 1,000,000 people stacked up on it. Oh, table breaks. Don't worry, buddy. Avengers will pay for it." And then like they start to like pick a fight. Throws the man out the window. Smashes a truck trying to save the guy's life. And he's just going around like, "Don't worry, guys. Avengers will pay for everything." So he's a little distracted.
And Hercules is like, oh, well, he saves the guy from getting hit by a truck, but then he is like, should you worry about the truck driver? He's like, nah, he had a seatbelt. We're good. Good old 80s propaganda. Seatbelts will save your life. That's all you need.
That is all you need.
But seriously, do wear your seatbelts.
Seriously. Zemo, Baron Zemo, we finally get to see him. He's hanging out at the base of the Masters of Evil, talking to Moonstone, who seems to be kind of like his second in command. But Baron Zemo, yeah, old purple sockhead. Love that guy.
It's a real
He's the
Megatron
mastermind.
Starscream situation with those two.
It is, yeah, because Moonstone in her real life is a psychiatrist, Dr. Carla Sofin, and she's always trying to, get at other people and see what makes them tick and kind of turn them over to her side. And so that's at least all the interpretation I've read of her throughout Thunderbolts, and it was really nice to see that it goes back this far, because I didn't really expect them to bring any of that out. So it was nice to see them kind of like having a little bit of a power play throughout this thing. I always like that when the villains are you kind of see why they are villains, because they just can't get along with each other. Like they always have to one up each other a little bit. I really like that.
Yeah, I think she's one of the like breakout characters of Thunderbolts because I do really like her. But she was really interesting because she's not the original Moonstone. She basically was the psychiatrist of the original Moonstone and tricked him into giving her his powers.
Yeah, and then when she was on an alternate Earth, she did it again with the alternate version of that guy. So she has two of them now.
Oh, really?
Which, yeah, it happened somewhere in the Thunderbolts run. I really enjoy that moment. Um, so, and then at some point, like all these villains are hanging out at the base and they're fighting, and Mr. Hyde is fighting Piledriver, a member of the Wrecking Crew, and I'm not really sure why. Like we find out later that Zemo, like told Piledriver to pick a fight with Mr. Hyde, knowing it was just going to escalate, and I don't understand the point of that whole exchange. I'm a little confused.
Right. It was to show Moonstone that Zemo had influence over Mr. Hyde because Moonstone shows up and she's like, "Calm down, Mr. Hyde," and he's like, "I'll kill you."
Oh, all right.
And then Zemo puts his hand on his arm and is like, "Calm yourself, mein Freund." And then Zemo's
and he had a little needle that like did calm him down with a chemical. Yeah,
Yes.
right. Okay, I remember that now. It seems like a weird way of like showing your dominance over somebody by like I don't know. I feel like there's a better way to show that. But that's all right. And at this point, I'm realizing all the like when Piledriver shows up, I'm like, okay, the whole Wrecking Crew is going to be here, and we start to see more and more villains. Basically, all the Tiger Shark is there. I love Tiger Shark. His costume is the dumbest. Who else is there?
Goliath.
Goliath, yes, who is Atlas from the Thunderbolts. Basically, a guy who can grow big, and that's it.
But not Black Goliath, like the Goliath we usually know.
No, he's the
No.
good guy Goliath. This is the bad guy Goliath until he turns into a good guy Atlas.
I really like that.
Formerly Power Man until Luke Cage beat him up.
Oh, that's
and took
right.
his
He
name.
was also Power Man. He's like he goes way back. I think like Avengers number 20 or something like that.
This dude just keeps losing his name to everybody, doesn't he?
Yep.
Does poor guy. You said you love something.
I love that. Like we're like halfway through this book, and like Captain America has done like jack shit. Like,
oh yeah,
but I kind of love it because it kind of makes me feel like he's like a higher level executive at a company. Like, like Captain America's not involved in every adventure. Like he's an Avenger, but like, he doesn't come in for everything. Like he's mildly aware and he may be consulted. And like he does show up later in this book. But for the first half of it, I'm like, we're just reading about like fucking Black Knight and the Wasp and Paladin, and I'm like, and Hercules, and I'm like, I actually really enjoy this. It's almost like
it too, yeah.
It's almost like Justice League International, like exactly like the same era, but like way better, which I wasn't expecting coming in. Because like Justice League International, I mean, it's a funny book in the respect that like Hercules is funny, and like some of the characters are like mildly amusing, but it's like low level heroes like in this like premier team. But it's better done than JLI, which I wasn't really expecting at all. Like it's surprising. I think if people would recommend JLI, I'd say read Avengers like Stearns run. Like you'd be surprised how much better it is.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
The brainwashing is really working.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking like one of the like few like good '80s era things from DC and saying like, don't read Marvel instead. Like that seems wrong.
But and a book I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I think this explains probably why you were like didn't warm up to JLI that much. Mm-hmm. Because like the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, wow, this is like treading the same ground that JLI was at the same time and doing it like way better. I was really surprised.
Well, it also balances a team book very well because with a character like Captain America, you kind of know everything there is to know about him. He'll show up for the fights. He'll be around for the important moments, but it gives you a chance to explore all these other characters. And I think he balances them all really well. Because throughout this whole thing, we haven't really been talking about it, but Captain Marvel is kind of like exploring her light powers a little bit, like going out into space and like trying to push herself and see what she can do. And Black Knight is trying to investigate where the magic from his sword comes from, how it works exactly. And so I like all those little moments, and it does help you kind of, give a reason to care about these characters. Even if it is kind of more directly related to their powers, it's still a very good in to their characters,
But
to use those powers as a way to communicate some struggle.
You're totally right. And it also like hides like shit that like Namor was in this book for like 4 issues, and like the first issue is like we need to have Namor part of this team. Like just kidding, we're writing him out of the book like less than an issue later. And like that's shit that happens like in current day Marvel books, and I'm like, well, then why the fuck did you put Nova on this team if you're not even gonna do anything with them? And I'm like, it hides it really well. I'm like, okay, cool. Namor's not in this book. That's fine. Keep on moving.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Yeah, and I really like the sense you get the idea that there's like other, it from a marketing standpoint, you're like, oh, I should check out Captain America. It seems like he's really busy with these other things going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of busy, boy, Avengers are about to get busy because all these villains they're having their big meeting with Baron Zemo, and he's like, listen, y'all, you know why we can't beat the good guys? Because they always work together. So listen, let's work together. Let's be the masters of evil. And they all go attack the mansion all at once. And Hercules is not there. He's supposed to be on watch, but some lady friend has invited him out. Ooh, all right. So Hercules is not there, and Jarvis, the butler, is on watch. And basically, the Avengers Mansion has no defenses because the walls practically melt just to let the Masters of Evil in. Like, this was another one of my little problems with the books. Like, they got in like very, very easily. Like, they just stormed the gate and all busted in, and that was it. Like, Avengers Mansion has fallen, and that is it.
Well, but I do think they do a good job of explaining like how it happened, like that Baron Zemo's been monitoring their communications, and they knew exactly. They're like, the defense things are going to come right from here and here. So like, yeah, there's like 10 super strong dudes. Of course, they also easily
Captain Marvel was like out of town, like flying around. There was like they kind of knew that everybody else was accounted for. So you're right, it was planned very well. And they go in. They've also been. Oh, we didn't mention. There's another character named Blackout, who I don't really know much of anything about, but he has like a darkness power. Like he can envelop people in a darkness dimension thing.
Yeah, he's like Cloak, but evil and sort of autistic, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, or like he's got some kind of a mental problem, and Moonstone has been trying to like get to him, being like, "Hey, like work with us, do what we tell you to do." And so Zemo tells him to capture Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel like teleports in, thinking it's a distress call from the Wasp, but no, it's fake. And so she instantly gets encased in this darkness dimension, and she's trapped. They've been like beating up Jarvis. They beat up the Black Knight because the Black Knight's fucking nothing. He sucks, and they're able to take him pretty easily and like take his sword away. And then
Mr. Hyde beats the shit out of Black Knight. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's well. He also he does some more beating later, which is kind of disturbing. But Captain. So later, Captain America and Wasp, once they figure out what's going on, they go to pick up Hercules, who had been drugged the night before by this woman that was paid by the Master people to keep him out, which is perfect. And so they all. Wasp has a plan. It's like, hey, we're going to get back into the castle. And Hercules is like, fuck that, no. And he charges right in and, of course, gets himself up.
I like that the lettering of his dialogue and, like, his dialogue balloons are, like, it's like he's a, handicap type drunk. Like, it's so wavy. He's like, what is the meaning of this subterfuge, Wasp? And I don't take orders.
There's also maybe my favorite funny moment in the book where he's down and all the villains kind of take a second look at each other and then start kicking him while he's down, like they beat him up all together. It was a beautiful little moment. That's the other thing I really like about this book, the amount of time it did spend focused on the villains, because there are so many of them. I always enjoy focusing on the villains more than focusing on the heroes, so it worked very well.
And it's a good mix. There's a lot of classic like 60s villains, and then like Blackout and some of these other people where you're like, who? Or like Titania is like a pretty new character. They reference Secret Wars, which was I guess 2 years earlier, and that's where she's from. So it was a good mix of like.
She was that recent. Okay, yeah. So Captain America also gets captured, which seems a little weird to me that Captain America would go down, but he does. And the issue ends with Wasp is like on the outside. This whole building has been encased in this darkness wall that they can't get past. And this issue ends with Hercules' body being like thrown out of this wall. And it has no pulse. oh my god, Hercules, he's dead. Oh no, oh no, Hercules is dead. So the next issue, I really love the cover of this issue, you guys. The wording on here. Vince, are you still there? You haven't said anything in a while.
Yeah, I have. I'm still here.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. All right. So the cover, I want to read the caption on the cover here. The absorbing man has gone toe to toe with Thor. Titania has held her own against She-Hulk. And now Ant-Man and the Wasp are going to stop them? Oh boy. Yeah. Ant-Man and the Wasp.
The covers for all of these issues are really good.
They are really good covers. I enjoy all of these a lot. So Ant-Man runs into the Wasp at the hospital because that's where they've taken Hercules' body because he's dying. And
it's Paul Rudd Ant-Man, though. It's not Michael Douglas Ant-Man.
Right. Yeah, Scott Lang. So he's, kind of having fun, talking to the Wasp. It's a pretty good conversation, actually. I think this was one of my favorite issues because I really like the conversation they had with each other, just kind of talking about, what it means to have friends going down, being a leader, all that kind of stuff. And then the doctors tell Wasp that Hercules is dead, and then you find out he's not really dead. Hey, don't worry, he's still alive.
He just has a heartbeat every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes because he's a god. So yeah, it's great. Zemo and who shows up to start a fight? Oh yeah, Titania and Absorbing Man show up, and they kind of have a fight throughout the hospital with ants showing up and fighting, and it's a fairly standard kind of fight, but it goes fairly well. Meanwhile, oh my god, this is where Cap comes in, because while he's being held captive, Zemo is kind of torturing him by taking all these mementos that they're stealing from the mansion, like looting, and like ripping up pictures of Bucky and pictures of Captain America's mom. And Mr. Hyde crushes up his old shield. And I'm like, all right, man, it's pretty brutal. And then Mr. Hyde starts torturing Jarvis. Like, for real torture. Like, so bad that he's screaming and they have to do it off panel because it's too bad that they don't want to show the young viewers. Like, oof. Oh, man, that was a tough moment for me, you guys. Like, that was genuinely shocking that Jarvis was getting beat up so bad. Like, he's not even a superhero. What are they doing beating up their butler? It's mean, you guys.
Yeah, Mr. Hyde is a bad guy.
Well, and later, I'm jumping way towards the end. Captain America, it's like I held my strong during that because I knew I would get my vengeance, which is a fucked up thing to say. As far as I'm like, just torture the shit out of Jarvis because I'm gonna beat the shit out of you later, and I'm just waiting for it.
Weird.
Like, or you could just like not let that happen and then like still beat the shit out of Zemo, but that's okay. On the lighter side, though, I really liked how they were looting the Avengers Mansion. And, like, some of them were like, oh, man, they got, like, our buddy's, like, costume just up, like on display. Like, that's kind of fucked up, right?
Oh, yeah, the Porcupine's costume. Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, I would like to think, like, of, like, a normal villain, like, rolling into the Batcave and being like, why did he keep all this shit? Like, that's really fucking weird, right? Like... He has this big penny and this dinosaur, and he has Joker costumes. Why? It's fucked up. So I really like that, and I also like that they were like, man, they don't really have nice shit around here. Which I assume they're probably like if there was a real superhero team, they'd probably all be like dumb meatheads, and it'd probably be smelly and sweaty and have just like weights and like a lot of creatine and like whey protein, and that's about it. It'd probably be like the lamest mansion to loot ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would be like breaking into LeBron James's house.
I mean, there'd probably be like some nice marble floors, and then like it'd just be sweaty, stinky. It's my guess is what Avengers Mansion.
There's just a room full of free stuff that people have given them.
Yeah, like because didn't Michael Phelps just say like he kept all his gold medals like in a drawer because he had nowhere else to put them, or like in a shoebox?
Oh my god.
Oh, Phelpsy. So issue 276 is where we kind of see the Avengers really starting to fight back because a bunch of other people start showing up. Wasp calls up Thor, who at this point is Sigurd Johnson. Did I say that right?
Jarlson.
Jarlson. I'm sorry, Jarlson. Oh, autocorrect must have done something there on my little notes that I took here. But why didn't you change Sigurd then? What's going on? Anyways, Wasp calls him up, and it's a cool bearded Thor. He's shown up, ready to fight.
I
Captain
also like
Marvel.
how this book starts, though. This book starts with the Wasp giving like a police deposition, and that
Oh,
functions
yeah.
as your recap. It's just like it's really cool because they don't have recap pages in Marvel Comics of this era. But she's like, and then this happened,
Yeah.
and then the Masters of Evil formed, and then they took Avengers Mansion, and then Hercules was hurt and he's almost dead. He's in a coma at the hospital, and then this, and I'm like, this is really good plotting, guys. Like I'm like, this is
Yeah, it did I think all these issues started off with really great recaps in a way that didn't feel too repetitive while still kept moving
Yeah.
things along
Because
very
that's
well.
the problem
Yeah.
with that's the problem is they can sometimes feel really repetitive if you're reading them in a blast like we did. But I was like, this works like functionally through the
Yeah.
story if it wasn't. But also if I come back a month later, I'm like, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Roger Stern, guys,
Um,
he's really good.
I think this is one of my favorite moments where Captain Marvel is trapped in this darkness dimension, and there is another superhero who accesses that same dimension.
Yeah, that's
but
cool.
Shroud, and I really like that she was able to see him using it and like see the light, and so like she jumps out of there while he's trying to fight some thug. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Really started to get me thinking about like different superheroes using the same type of power source and how that kind of has an effect on it.
Because that would have been. I don't think he was like in another comic that month, but that would have been really funny if she had just like kind of like zoomed out, like if like
Yeah.
if you'd imagine like Spider-Man was fighting the Spot or something, and then Captain Marvel just flies out of the Spot, and both Spider-Man and the Spot are like, what the fuck just happened there? And it just keeps going, and then like it would like find out more about that in Avengers 2076. Like
That would have been sweet.
I use the Spot because I don't actually know who the Shroud guy is, but
The Shroud is awesome.
Yeah, I've never seen him either. Yeah.
He was a member of Avengers West Coast, and he's always been like a West Coast guy. But he posed as a supervillain. He's kind of like Batman, I guess, in a way, in that he's like, "Oh, I'm a crime boss," but secretly he would just beat up other crime bosses.
sweet.
Um,
We should read some Avengers West Coast sometime.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that. We also meet Dr. Druid, who, boy, if some of these people are D-list, this guy is like,
I was going to say, speaking of things I
H-list,
am not
J-list.
interested in.
yeah. So Dr. Druid was like he's basically like a Doctor Strange kind of guy. Like
Except
that's
he's a bald dude in an ill-fitting robe.
right. It's very like he's a weird. I don't know, but he fills that same kind of role, like being a mystic when you need a mystic. And he's heard that the Avengers are in trouble. Like he gets some psychic vision from Black Knight or whatever, and he shows up to help, and he's trying to penetrate through this wall of darkness. Meanwhile, Black Knight gets his sword back, and they're all fighting all the villains in there. Everything sort of starts to come to a head. Basically, as you expect, like all the good guys come in and start beating up bad guys little by little. Like it's kind of all over the place, but there's not really any other surprises at this point. Zemo is like, "Oh shit, they got Thor here. All right, I'm out." And Yellow Jacket is like, "Hey, we're just gonna leave our other villain friends here." And Zemo goes, "Yep, I don't give a shit." And Yellow Jacket's like, "Oh, all right, so this is who I'm working for. Okay, cool." And that's really kind of it with throughout even the next issue. It's just a lot of resolution through fighting. Any particular moments that stand out to you guys?
One, the Wrecker calls Captain America flag butt.
Okay.
Pretty
One,
good.
how is that forgettable? It's not. It's amazing. And then on the next page, he says
I
he has a
forgot.
fancy
I'm sorry.
pants shield. So but what it reminded me, I actually really dug this one because this is when they like get back like into Avengers Mansion, and Avengers
Right.
Mansion is just like torn to shit. And I don't know if you guys ever played Perfect Dark for the Nintendo 64, but it reminded me a lot of the Carrington Institute level. The Carrington Institute this is me talking about Perfect Dark now. It was basically like the hub world for the game. Like it's where you like, you started off in this like kind of world and you could go off on missions from the Carrington Institute, or you could like walk and, do like little like challenges in the firing range, like how Mario has the castle, the same type of hub world concept. But then halfway through the game, and I'm sure it was just to save space, the Carrington Institute actually has a full level where aliens attack and invade the Carrington Institute. So like what was your safe space is now suddenly like now infiltrated by aliens, but you've been through it so much time that like the map like really fucking well at that point. And so I kind of like the idea. It's just like they're returning to their safe space, and I'm like, you could do a whole like all these like Avengers and X-Men movies have to do all this like globe trotting where they have to be like in 4 different like locations across the world. And I'm kind of like, I'd really like to do something smaller, like almost like Die Hard-esque, where it's just
those Home Alone moments, right?
Right.
Where you're on your home turf. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you could do a real small Avengers movie where they're just at Avengers Mansion, or the Avengers Stark Tower or the X Mansion, and the whole movie is set there. Like, it's not that difficult. And I think you could do a really cool movie with that. Or a good story.
I think you're right.
And it's a cool idea too, because I mean, obviously there's been plenty of sort of villain attacks where like, somebody just shows up in the mansion and is like, I'm challenging the Avengers to fight me kind of thing. But like they were really dedicated to just like trashing the place. So it's more than just like, oh, they knocked over a wall. It's like they have gone through like room by room and destroyed it.
Well, it's like rubble.
And it's different because it's not like a tower defense level, or like where they're defending their home turf. Like they've been kicked out of their home turf, and now they've got to re-infiltrate it, which I guess is how Die Hard works, also.
Yeah.
But like
it was I really liked it too. My biggest problem with like the last issue and this whole resolution is that we don't really get anything new from this last issue at all. It's like, okay, here's all the pieces that we've set up. Now we're just going to see them all fall down. And our biggest sort of fight, like the most climactic moment, comes from Dr. Druid, which was a little weird because, he just kind of shows up out of nowhere and he is the least important character ever. And he's having like this mental battle with Blackout, trying to convince him like, hey, don't let Zemo control you. Do what you want to do. And so finally, like, he turns the tables on Zemo, and that's how they all end up winning. And, I'm sure they would have been fine otherwise, but that's just that big final moment that gives Captain America the edge and throws Zemo down onto the ground, and the end. All the villains are captured, and Captain America's crying over the torn up photos of his mom.
I like the quiet ending though. It's a nice quiet ending to a book. Like, it's like he was like reflecting, like I didn't really think about it in the moment because I was just like so wrapped up in other shit. But like this really like hurt me. Like, and it's like nice to actually see like people like reflect on like, oh yeah, bad shit just did happen. Like, because like you watch like Independence Day and everybody's like, whoa, we fucking killed the aliens. And nobody thinks like, well, half of us all died. Like, should we like mourn? No, we fucking killed the aliens. Like, don't worry.
We intentionally nuked Houston.
Like, and nobody's like, like that's like traumatic, and like everybody's like, woohoo! So I kind of like this like coda of like this was still kind of like a shitty victory.
I do feel like it's also really well told. I mean, I think John Buscema does a really good job of throughout this issue. Zemo is running around with Captain America's shield strapped to his back, which looks super cool. And then at the end, he's like, Captain America shows up and Captain Marvel's there. And Captain Marvel could easily beat Zemo at this point. But Captain America's like, no, I want to fight him. And he's like, fine, I'm going to kill you with your own shield. So I do like that kind of thing where he's just like, he's really trying to just take stuff from Captain America just to mess with him.
That's fun. I like that. That's cool.
I do too. But so yeah, that pretty much brings us to the ending here. So let's talk about a couple of our recurring segments on the show. Favorite characters, new favorite characters who you have met during these issues that you did not know about before, who you really like now. Chris, I mean, you're the old pro. I don't think you've got any new characters, but why don't you start us off with maybe favorite forgotten character?
I really like Captain Marvel, and this period Roger Stern did a great job with the character, and then no one else ever did.
Oh, yeah. Vince, how about you?
I never liked Hercules until I had read this. I like when Hercules like Leroy Jenkins out when they're like, "We need to wait for reinforcements." No, Leroy Jenkins, and then just like runs and gets caught. Like I think he runs out of the van, just like
Just smashes through it.
they're like, "Hey,
Oh,
hey,
this
Leroy,
guy.
let's wait." No, and he just jumps
No.
through the van to get caught, and I'm like, I never liked Hercules like when they were pushing like when he took over the Hulk book in the mid 2000s around Civil War era. I didn't really care for him. I didn't see the big deal, so I liked him, and then I may actually be warming up to the Wrecking Crew, like.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
great. Oh, we
I
didn't
love-
mention the moment where Thor depowers them because they have Asgardian weapons as well. But Thor, like, somehow diverts three of their powers into just one of them. So one of them's still running around with a bunch of power, but hey, at least the other three are out of there, right?
Yeah,
Or did they
But-
get? I don't know.
Right,
That was weird.
because the Wrecker like split his power with the other three. So he's like, no, I'm gonna get rid of these three guys by just depowering them and making the Wrecker stronger because I could beat him.
Yeah.
but yeah, like I've never really liked the Wrecking Crew. They've always just been like kind of cannon fodder to like kick off a book like in a boring fight at the beginning. But I've read enough of them. I think they were in the Roger Stern Spider-Man we read also, and I was like, I'm starting to like these guys because wasn't
Just Thunderball.
was that it? Yeah, it was just Thunderball. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh man, you all right? Yeah. I do not know
I
any of
think
their
I-
names still, but I do like them.
I've got to give a shout out to Mr. Hyde. You know, especially after his poor showing in Ghost Rider, it's nice to see him back on top again. So I'm gonna give some love to Mr. Hyde. Yeah, you're my boy.
Wow, unexpected.
Yeah, our dark horse in Mr. Hyde. So
Black
yeah,
Knight
that-
is
that-
still lame.
Yeah.
You know, he was a little bit better in this book, but overall,
The thing
yeah,
is
still-
he was fine though. He wasn't like a waste of space. At least I'm like, I don't really care about you,
Correct.
but I'm not like fucking get this guy out of my book. He sucks. Like
right. It wasn't that bad.
like how JLI was, and like there's always like two Avengers. I feel like when we read the Buscema Avengers, I'm like, who the fuck is this dude? I was gonna say Jolteon, but that's not his name. The one that had like his broken foot. I was like, I don't care about this guy. Get him out of here. Justice.
Yeah.
I was like, get him out of here. I'm like, Black Knight is totally fine compared to him.
They
very good.
interacted in Kurt Busiek's Avengers, and that's the reason he broke his foot. Is Black Knight smashed it with a sword.
Oh, you're
What?
really selling me on this run, Chris. Black
Wow.
Knight and Justice together in a scene? What? You'll never believe what happens. Clickbait.
Yeah, and they goof up and hurt Justice. They suck.
Goof up. Oh boy. Oh, classic goof up. Oh no.
You know, it's a goof.
So our other recurring segment, are you going to keep reading it? The Roger Stern Avengers? Yeah, I think I'd read more of this thing for sure, and definitely his West Coast Avengers that you mentioned at some point. I think I definitely want to read all that. And it sounds like we're all kind of in agreement on that.
Chris, you said this was like the culmination of his run, right?
Yeah, he has, I think, 2 more arcs after this. One of which spins directly out of this, which is basically the Greek gods and Zeus in particular are like, "Hey, Earth, we're really mad at what just happened to Hercules." So Olympus gets mad, and then he has some other arc, but it's a long run. So this is kind of the culmination of a lot of stuff. He does a great job with like Wasp and all these characters that had been kind of marginalized, and really puts them in the forefront for a long time. It's really a fun run.
Yeah,
Yeah, he seems like he's one of these guys who's just good at writing lesser appreciated characters. You can really get that from reading this.
He writes like classically styled comics, like with a modern twist in a way that I don't see from any other writer of his vintage.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
even I mean, he almost feels like Mark Waid in the respect, but Mark Waid's doing it like as a throwback now.
Yeah, that's true.
But like he's doing like that same kind of thing. Like this is a classic comic, classically plotted, classic good guys and bad guys, and like, but he's doing it so well and so like modern that it doesn't feel like stodgy. It's really impressive. It makes me want to read more of his Spider-Man. Really, that's because I always like Spider-Man more than Avengers, just reminded me, like, I need to go back and read the Spider-Man.
It's all on Marvel Unlimited.
I know. A lot better than David Michelin Spider-Man, I'll tell you that.
I don't even know who that is. So I think that brings us to the end of the Avengers here. Overall, very good story. We are happy to have read it. And our next episode is going to be about a miniseries from the mid-2000s called Next Wave, Agents of Hate. And Vince, you had mentioned that Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, she's in this as well.
Yes.
But I don't really know. I just know it was kind of like a humorous, weird, like not very mainstream take on a team superhero book, and that's kind of all I know about it. It's written by Warren Ellis, who's one of the modern greats.
Who haven't read anything for this yet.
Yeah, we actually haven't done anything with him. Stuart Immonen, who's like I always really enjoy, and we're going to be reading the first 6 issues of this. I think it lasted for 12 issues, right?
Yep. There's Fin Fang Foom, isn't it?
Oh, love me some Fin Fang Foom, that big old green dragon. Yeah, very nice. So I can't wait. This is one that's been on my reading list for a while here, so I'm excited to be able to get to it. And Vince, you said you have read this before?
Yeah, but it's been a decade. I don't really remember it. I remember like the internet liking it more than I did, but
and Chris, you've definitely read this, right?
Yes, I've read it at least twice. It's fun.
Very good, very good. Vince, you were going to say something else?
No, I just wanted to see more about Monica Rambeau because I was like, I know her from somewhere. So,
like I said, that modern run on the Ultimate's really good as well. We'll talk about all that later. Anyways, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Any last minute words from you guys?
Chris, what did y'all recently do on Your Stupid Minds?
We recently did a movie tie-in with Doctor Strange, not 2016's Benedict Cumberbatch movie, but a 1978 TV pilot with Arrested Development's own Jessica Walter.
Yes.
I want to watch this thing. This sounds.
And this is a real Doctor Strange movie about Doctor Strange, not like how the Avengers was about, like the British Avengers.
Yeah, I mean Doctor Strange is in it.
Yeah.
It's not just.
Some name. Boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right, so look forward to that. Other than that, I think that brings us to the end. So, Vince, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Flagbutt.
Chris, thank you very much.
I don't have anything better than that.
That's all right. And from me, your lovable Flagbutt, I love you so much. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.